record. Okay. Okay. All right. We finally figured out technology. Hello, Debbie. Hello, everyone.
Hi, Sasha.
So we decided to get together today to discuss the Anthony Fauci so-called private diary, which is not a private diary, but because there's such a brouhaha this week on social media about this release of secret private diaries of Anthony Fauci by Senator Paul congressional investigation into origin of COVID. So we decided to dispel some myths and to discuss it in a more sober manner and see what actually is going on. So
also I would say to tie it into the upcoming hearings that everybody's very excited about. Again.
Right, on Wednesday, July 29th.
Yeah,
so everybody thinks that
this is kind of a prep for that. If you really are interested in that, first of all, don't be interested. And second of all, listen to this before you listen to any kind of Fauci testimony or read any Fauci so-called diaries.
Right, exactly. So first, let me just as an introduction say, and I've prepared some notes here because it's the document itself is almost 1,200 pages long. So there was not enough time to read it. I did some queries using AI tools on various topics in this document, and I'm going to highlight some things. But as a front matter, let's just remind ourselves that whatever Senator Paul is doing is not a real investigation of anything. It's not investigation of any crimes, COVID crimes, whatever you think of COVID it continues. So the only true investigation of any crime can happen when the crime is over and we can have an open and truthful discovery of evidence and discussion of evidence. There's no such thing with COVID because it has not ended. The crime continues. The crime not only continues, there are numerous derivative crimes that are ongoing globally, but more importantly for us in the United States. And the reason it continues is because, of course, we still have the COVID emergency declared under PrEP Act. That declaration was extended by Biden administration and is being upheld by RFK Jr., who refuses to terminate it. And this declaration is supposed to last at least until end of 2029. So we're still under the same national security doctrine. COVID, oranges of COVID or anything related to COVID policy really is still classified information. It's a state, military and intelligence secret. And so whatever Paul is doing with Fauci in it is a play, in my opinion. It's a theatrical performance designed to manipulate the public opinion in the same way they did everything during COVID, starting in early 2020. So that's kind of the overarching theme. So anything you want to say, Debbie, about as a background of what
Sure, I'll just add to that, yes. Mm-hmm. And the way that it has always been played in terms of covering up the real true COVID nature of the operation, the secret, covert, military intelligence, global nature of the operation, is that there are three things that are used to cover it up. One, blame Fauci. Two, blame gain of function. Three, blame China. Mm-hmm. And then there's one that's used in the United States, which is blame the Biden administration. So don't forget about what happened, the fact that it started with Trump, Operation Warp Speed was Trump, he owns it. Forget about all of that. So those things are important to keep in mind when we look at people saying that they're investigating something or that they're trying to look at the cover-up. Because if they are saying blame Fauci, blame gain of function, blame China, blame the Democrats, and we have at least 2 or 3 out of those 4 happening here with Paul's investigation, then we know that he's not really looking at what happened. He's just trying to divert attention away from what happened. Mm-hmm. And what really happened, I think, Sasha, you and I don't have to talk about it, but I want to just direct viewers to our work that we've done on what actually happened. And the COVID dossier, which is on Sasha's Substack and my Substack, is the sort of definitive document that we have showing that this was a global coordinated public-private partnership with pharmaceutical companies and lots of other private entities coordinating with military and intelligence alliances. That's what happened. And if anybody wants to investigate it, that's what they need to investigate.
Exactly. So I will link the COVID dossier to this video again. And it's very important to note that this dossier contains information for numerous dozens of countries, pretty much all regions of the world that we've profiled. And it shows identical structure of Operation COVID. And the identical structure is number one, no public health agencies were in charge of anything. Public health agencies were not in charge of COVID response in any country that we looked at. And the dossier contains only official government documentation proving all of this. So not a public health event, public health agencies are not in charge. They actually, for the most part, didn't know how the decisions were made. And there's a lot of evidence that public health agency staff, including senior staff, were themselves in the dark, upset at being sort of superseded by unknown entities to them. And, so there's a lot of evidence of that. And there's a lot of evidence that military was in charge and intelligence agencies were in charge. And all the decisions were made secret. And in every country in the world, an equivalent of national security doctrine was invoked.
Yes.
So that's the number one finding, and it's again clearly documented with official government documentation, so everyone should understand this. And so it drives me mad when I see high-profile so-called health freedom accounts pretending like this is still a question. It could still be anything, that it still could be that something public health happened.
And that Fauci was in charge. So
that
basically,
Fauci somehow was in charge.
Fauci was the head of
Yeah.
Fauci was the head of NIAID. He was also involved in biosecurity, so he had his foot in both worlds. But he certainly was not in charge of the COVID response. And so people who are writing about the newly released documents and also about the hearings that are going to happen are saying things like, Sasha, should we go over what some people are saying?
Let's start with that.
So just to look today at some people who are talking about the documents that were released. One of them I just randomly chose from a bunch of so-called alternative sources. One of them is Jessica Rose, who said that Fauci single-handedly could have put an end to the suffering of billions of people. Single-handedly, he could have done that. But instead, he chose not to, and his actions led to what can only be described as the biggest scandal and cover-up of this century. So it's all Fauci. He made the decisions. He could have saved 1 billion people. He's in charge of the cover-up. Those are all lies. Now, maybe Jessica doesn't know that they're lies. She's heard me talk about the military and intelligence aspects of COVID. She knows about our work, Sasha. Maybe she disagrees with it. Maybe she thinks it's conspiratorial, but I've never heard her address it directly. And certainly this does not take any of it into account.
Yeah, so this is a severe misrepresentation. So first of all, when she says Fauci could have single-handedly ended the suffering of billions of people. Well, okay, this begs the question, who inflicted the suffering on billions of people, which Jessica does not address. So somehow Fauci could have played a white knight role, but chose not to, but we don't know who the dark knight is.
Right. Oh, that's true. I mean, because if he could have saved everybody, he couldn't have actually been the one who imposed those things. Right. Good point. Good point.
So, okay, so this is already, you can see it's all of these statements by people like Jessica Rose are designed to elicit emotional response, designed to keep you in fear, still in fear of that gain of function, something that Fauci may have played role with and China covered up. So keep you in fear, keep you anxious, keep you angry, keep you upset. And, I know you're not on X, but I spent some time yesterday and today looking at different reports. people and mainstream news outlets like the Fox News and CNN. Well, CNN, we of course understand, but Fox News. Scott Gottlieb also joined in Fauci witch hunt.
Really?
Yes. You know, imagine the temerity. You know? So
that's
Scott
very
Gottlieb was
interesting.
like, yeah, I thought he was nice. Yeah, but it turns out he wasn't nice.
That's very interesting because I'm sure they work together. And
Of course.
also, I think that Fauci's role as the one that they throw under the bus is
Oh, yeah.
so hilarious. I mean, he's taken on that role from the beginning, and it just keeps working.
Absolutely, it keeps working. So in fact, this so-called diary is actually, you know, as much as I read it, I scanned it, I did some queries on it. It just looks to me that this was a document set up ahead of time to maintain this narrative, to maintain the storyline that Fauci was somehow this, you know, rogue, very narcissistic, megalomaniac. These are the words are being used right now by everyone on social media. He's a narcissist. He's a megalomaniac, as Zero Hedge called him. He is a psychopath. He so self-centered. Look at all the narrative that he wrote about all the news coverage in this diary. He's all focused on how many interviews he had, who talked to him, how Nancy Pelosi praised him, how Trump was listening to him. So all this, again, fluff, emotional narrative, creating a villain. And he is I know he's an evil person, but that's beside the point. They're creating, again, an emotional narrative of this lone gunman, villain, psychopath in his garage or in his private office at NIH, writing all these diaries and almost like his manifesto, right? So that everyone is just glued to this Hollywood production and not paying attention to anything real, like, again, what we're trying to call attention to. What is the organization chart? What laws are invoked? Which agencies are in charge? Not public health, Department of Homeland Security, and the military, right? So that is completely not discussed, completely glossed over. The fact that the crime continues, the fact that they have changed nothing, the fact that RFK Jr. has changed nothing. And, you know, I could paraphrase Jessica Rose and say, well, RFK Jr. for about 2 years now has had the opportunity to end suffering for billions of people and chose not to.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point. And another thing that I think is hilarious is all of those things like, oh, megalomaniac and narcissist. Think about our president for a minute. Okay. Yeah. I mean, just for an example of somebody who we might want to pay attention to, not that he is the main guy either. He's not the main guy.
Yeah.
And he's another front guy. And the other, but if you look, those identical terms that our side is now applying to Fauci are literally taken word for word from what the other side, right, says about Trump. And when you see that, when you see the exact same narrative being applied on both sides to two different figures in order to rile up the two opposing parties against each other, instead of getting people riled up about who's actually committing these crimes, it's much harder to get riled up at a giant global public-private partnership that doesn't have there's no one person you can prosecute, there's no one person you can point to, and it's much harder to look at the system and at the perpetrators who are a global network of perpetrators than to look at one person, either Trump or Fauci. But it's hilarious that they're using those words to describe Fauci. I just think like taken right out of the Trump playbook.
Exactly. And I mean, they're perfectly well applicable to Trump. We know that.
Both. Right, exactly. So,
and again, like being megalomaniac is not a crime. I keep reminding people, none of what Fauci did during COVID, no matter how disgusting his behavior, broke any law. He has not broken any law. And so all this investigation, again, it's a theater, it's fluff production designed to glue everyone to this emotional narrative about Fauci being evil megalomaniac. But you had some background about him already being dragged in numerous congressional testimonies. So this stuff that's happening on Wednesday is
yeah. I mean, I'm just going to mention, so I just asked the Google AI, how many times did Fauci testify in Congress? Dozens of times. He testified during COVID at the beginning about, what was going on. Then he had very contentious interactions with a whole bunch of, people who were questioning him about the origins. And then the two big ones were in January 2024 and June 2024, when he was hauled into some Senate committee, some congressional committees, and questioned for many, like 14 hours in one of them, behind closed doors, and another one that was an open one. And so on June 3rd, 2024, he was grilled by the House Select Subcommittee. Now, the House Select Subcommittee at the time was chaired by Brad Wenstrup, a Republican from Ohio. And in their report, in their final report from the subcommittee, here's one of the paragraphs. Operation Warp Speed was a tremendous success and a model to build upon in the future. The vaccines, which are now probably better characterized as therapeutics, undoubtedly saved millions of lives by diminishing likelihood of severe disease and death. Okay, so that's the subcommittee that questioned Fauci this was his post-retirement, huge hearing. Everybody was all excited about it. And they questioned him about gain of function and whatever. It's all about gain of function, not about any of this. And of course, at the end, they concluded that mRNA is a wonderful thing and the vaccines are fantastic. So how do we evaluate that committee's findings and what that committee was actually intended to do? Yeah. And now let's evaluate the upcoming hearings in the same way. Okay, so, and also, why do we need another public hearing? That's another thing, is to recycle the story of Fauci and gain of function, and all they ever ask him is about the funding of gain of function. And the only crime, Sasha, that they can ever try to pin on him, and they'll spend like 10 hours trying to pin it on him, is did he lie to Congress about whether NIH funded gain of function research? That's the crime. Did he lie about whether NIH funded? Now we know, and we've known all along, probably since 2022 or 2023, when documents came out showing that the funding of gain of function research, if you even care about that, at the Wuhan Institute and other places, was funded by USAID, which is the CIA, and the Department of Defense. It was not funded, it was somewhat very small percentage funded by NIH, but most of the funding came from the military and the intelligence. Does anybody ask about that in these hearings? It's hilarious. It's hilarious. Absolutely hilarious.
And another point everybody forgets, there is no definition of gain of function. It's in the eye of the beholder. Because every infectious disease research lab in the United States, of which there are about 1,000, any lab, any corporate lab that works on vaccines, or infectious disease therapeutics, biologics, conducts identical set of activities, which all fall either under life-saving vaccine development or gain of function, depending on how you want to call it. But the activities are identical. I have published, as an example, a study that was in peer-reviewed journal, where J.D. Vance's company at the time, Amplify Bio, was one of the contractors, together with CIA Resilience, together with NIH, together with SAPI, Gavi, all the usual suspects. It was conducted in Ohio, in the United States, not in China, not in Wuhan. And it was working on live replicating chimeric Nipah Ebola virus that they made themselves and tried to make more deadly and more virulent and whatever other gains of functions that they wanted to add to it. And it was all done in Ohio and funded by NIH and funded by private corporations and CIA, USAID, So that's just an illustration that whatever you guys claim, scary gain of function things that Fauci funded is funded daily in the United States. And also, there are leaks from these deadly gain-of-function labs in the United States, which is a reportable event to the CDC. And CDC records about 200 of these leaks in the United States every year. So every other day, we have a scary leak from a horrible gain-of-function lab that's operating in the United States. And we only have pandemics when they're declared by the president of the United States, which was in 2020.
And which, by the way, wasn't even Fauci.
It wasn't, no, Fauci.
Right. So if we're uncovering the crimes, you know what? Bring in Trump.
Yeah.
Trump
Why isn't Trump questioned? Where is his personal diary? And so on the question of the diary. So everyone again does let's move on this.